All right, got it. All right, welcome everybody to season 5, episode 55 of the Geometric View. Today we have with us George, the great pleasure to have with us George Leoniak from New Geometry. And I'm just ecstatic to have you on. I've taken a long sabbatical from the podcast, a much needed sabbatical. I've been podcasting for years. So it's glad to be back, and I'm inspired to be, I'm happy to be back with inspiration. And George brought me back here, and it was like, all right, let's do this. I'm excited. He's a great geometer, and he's inspired me in a few particular ways that I know of, that I'm aware of, and I can't wait to see more. But so George, introduce us to yourself. So in this episode, we're going to be basically doing 2 different podcasts. We're going to be merging our podcasts together. It's going to be something new for both of us. I like to surf around with my screen and share different videos and pictures and things. I mean, it's not really necessarily a presentation that I've put together, but I've taken this time and worked on a lot of other presentations for the next episodes that I'm really looking forward to. I've made some phenomenal, life-changing discoveries for me. I'm hoping everybody else will find some of their own inspiration from these new geometries. Speaking of new geometry, but yeah, you just had some new discoveries as well that that actually tie in directly to both of our work. So yeah. George, please tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into geometry. I understand you have a master's and also a couple of undergraduates. I didn't write the, so yeah. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, like Buddy said, we're doing something kind of a merge podcast here. So, you know, greetings to all the new geometry. Now, all the new geometry, that's K-N-E-W new. So for people on Buddy's podcast, know that K-N-E-W, all that will be in the description. But yeah, first of all, Buddy, I'm just so grateful that we're getting to share this time together and that we connected. And I want to thank Marian Grace, who will probably watch this video, for connecting us. She put us in a Facebook connection, said, hey, you guys should really check out each other's work. And that got the ball rolling. So big thanks there. Yeah, when I saw Buddy's work, I was just really taken by it and blown away. I love the use of the circles and the spiral patterns that were coming out of the circles. And you know, watching some of his videos since then, you know, there's a lot of overlap, and we're going to get into, you know, some of those connections with their work. Yeah, so it's just great to meet you one-on-one here, Buddy. And yeah, so, you know, my interest in sacred geometry and the background that I came from, as Buddy was alluding to, is really one of being a keen observer, really. You know, I spent a lot of time in nature before I ever picked up a compass in a straight edge or did any of these drawings. You know, I was out in nature looking at fractal patterns. You know, I was a wildlife tracker by trade. I'm a wildlife tracker. I run whole apprenticeships and bring people in the woods and share nature and all sorts of experiences like that with people. But years, you know, 5 or so years ago, I was like, I got to start working with the other patterns that I see. And then my keen observation skills just applied to working with these circle and line patterns, where it kind of, my curiosity and inquisitiveness that came from tracking just kind of went straight into all my explorations with the sacred geometry. So a lot of the things I share are kind of slightly different angles, because one thing in tracking I'll mention is you're always varying your vision. You move around the object so you could see it from all these angles. So if you check out any of my videos, you'll see I'm always like, well, we're looking at it from this view. Well, here's a drawing of what it looks like from this view. And then it looks like this view from this angle. And then unifying all those together so that that whole elephant with the leg and the trunk and everything starts to be a whole picture of the elephant, rather than this one little micro piece of one particular view. Let's say, you know, hexagon view or a pentagon view or something like that. So that's a little bit of my interest, my background. You'll see some slides, and Buddy and I are going to kind of bounce back and forth. We don't really have a particular plan, but buddy, why don't you take it away there for a minute?
Wow. I can't tell you how much that relates to me personally. And who I am as a person, and being an interpreter of rhythmic patterns, as Walter Russell puts it. I go mushroom hunting, so more specifically the Michigan morel mushrooms, and I love them. And I was taught by one of the best guys that I know around, and then he taught me and my brother. So that was something that that was awesome. That there's certain patterns that you look for, you know, and it's not where you expect the patterns to be most of the time, but it is as above, so below. Like you look at the canopy for what mushroom is at the base of the tree, because you can tell the type of leaning dead tree, slippery elm, or you know, whatever type of tree you're looking for. And you know, there's a whole
I love what you're saying, because it's like that's that we have that shared connection, because you know, like you're describing, it's like there's that gets in your body. I think in the video I just watched, you started to talk about that animism, you know, how it connects to this kind of inner knowing and relationship where the world is alive around you, you know. And that's how you can apply this sacred geometry from this page. It's really a unified field, you know, ingrains into your life, connects you so deeply to the forested field and humanity and all around us. It's that level of connection. And these depictions that we work with are kind of, you know, pulling back that layer so you could see it, you know, on the page in a way that is in your connections out in the natural world through that electric universe, like you're describing. You know, there's that electricity that's being transferred in between these objects in you that are communicating in a subtle way.
So something that you were saying about looking at things from all perspectives, there's really, I don't know if I've heard anybody say this before, but I might be coining it, the Morel Squat. You have to squat in order to find the morels. Sure, you could be standing right above them and not see them. You could be standing and looking for them, but as soon as you squat and you look, there's something you can see right at the angle, and you can at the right angle, you know, and you can really just look and carve the whole ground and see around you for quite some space, stand up and then walk and then do the Morel Squat again.
Oh man, that's great. Man, that's tracking. I mean, that's so cool. I mean, we didn't even know this was going to come up at all in our conversation. But you know, that's the tracker squat. I mean, that's what the trackers do. When the tracker squats down like that, you get down so that the light reflects off. So we're dealing with light. So tracking is all about how light is reflecting off objects. If you put your, you know, everybody could try this at home, you know, go up to a window and put a smudge mark with your finger on it, and then walk around that smudge mark. And at certain points, that smudge mark will disappear because the light's not hitting off the angles. But once you go over to this angle, oh, there's the smudge mark. That's what you're doing with tracking. You know, you're continually changing. So when you drop down to that squat, the light's reflecting off the forest floor in another type of way, you know, that's giving you more information. So you're playing with light in that type of tracking and looking. And that's, you know, the geometry we work with is kind of frozen light patterns, but it's the same type of, this is the same experience that I'm having when I'm working with those circles and lines on the page.
Another thing that you were talking about, like things coming together and how they work together. And as far as looking at things from different perspectives, I've had a series of awakenings, or actually, you know, I had my rebirth affirmation, or born again, or found Jesus experience through geometry, through a series of I was reading 2 books at the time, and and this geometry just came out of me. And I can describe, and I'm working on this book to come out at the very beginning of 2023. Well, I have a series of many different books, but there's this particular book that's coming out in 2023 that describes how exactly to construct the Doherty set and many other fun things that you can do with it, because it's a game. Everything is a game. The geometry of life is a game. The flower of life, the fruit of life, everything is a animated, iterative, rotating process of copy and paste, repeat, copy, paste, repeat. And when I'm designing this geometry through these successions of awakenings that I've had, which really the geometry becomes you become it. That's why it's called sacred geometry. It envelops you, and you don't even understand what it's doing or what you're doing with it, at least in my own personal experiences. But I've each time I understand more and more how the layers of the fractal embedded recursive nature of the cyclical universe is. And I'm showing more and more of it off, and there's an infinite amount of gates, and each one of the gates have to do with charge and how charge implodes and explodes in each one of the pearls. It's literally pearly gates, and it's literally the New Jerusalem, and it's how charge and charge rarefication and compression, expansion and contraction, hot and cold, what Walter Russell talked about, how these cubes become spheres and spheres become cubes. This geometry that we know, that we've read about, but we need to hit it. We need to blast it. We need to put this in like eternality, because this is the game. This is what it's all about. This is how first principle magnetohydrodynamic geometry comes out of these repetitive fractal implosion explosions, like Bucky was talking about, like Dan Winter's talking about. But what is the larger aspect of what we're looking at? What are these strands, these extra organelle that are outside of us that go forever? We can go through these tubes. We are these tubes. We are describing what Birkeland currents are. People that are astral projecting and going places instantaneously. This Akashic memory, there is a way in and a way out, and it is through geometry. Everything is geometric. It's all how charge embeds, how waves embed waves. But what I digress, and I also went on a tangent there. It's good to be tangile, I believe.
So that's what happens when you discover Jesus, all that afterwards.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for bringing me down a little bit to reality. But yeah, it literally is. It's what my life purpose is. Yeah. It's what the geometry. It's there's so much more. There's an infinite amount more of awakenings, because each discovery is so unique. It's like, I know you as a geometer and as a hunter and as a tracker. It's about discovery. We're discoverers. We're on the hunt. We're curious. We want to know. So there's something about being able to see a pattern and recognize it and be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly where that is, what that is, how that's created, and how it rotates, and how actually people could build machines out of this. It's the future. It's technology harnessed, you know. And I am very much a futurist in my geometry, in the attempts to connect it with as much technology and as many theories that there are, because like you said, we're all trying to explain the elephant by describing different parts about it, but the theories, a lot of the theories out there aren't necessarily against each other. They complement each other and and work with each other. So,
well, I mean, you want to keep riffing on that, or you have like,
no,
you know,
go,
if you
please.
think there's probably maybe 30 different trails I could follow in there. You know,
Feel free to grab one, or
yeah.
or I'm gonna take a sip of coffee,
Yeah,
ask a question, whatever.
yeah, well, I mean, I think you know, I think a huge part of what you said there is, you know, well, you know, the way I look at it is that we are the technology. We have everything within us, in our beingness, to, you know, for our enlightenment and fulfillment of, you know, flowering in this lifetime. You know, it's all in us. We all, the whole chakra system, the whole meridian system, that is all that's all sacred geometry. I mean, it's that compressed, condensed light into the kind of 3D form, but every single one of our cells is completely filled with light and electricity, right? You know, our whole beingness is all that. So, and I think as people like you're describing, kind of going through, and you know, many people at this time are going through awakening processes and getting to know themselves more. And at some point during that, there may be a kind of resonance with the sacred geometric patterns, you know, because they're part of that movement. You know, people, they see them, but it's deeper than just that they're part of that movement. Is that they resonate with that part of you, that light that's inside you, that resonates. That's the way I experience it, that resonates with that imagery, you know, because it's containing those root patterns. You showed in that electric video these scientists who ran these light down a tube, and they showed maybe hexagon structure, pentagon structure, decagons, you know, through the light in the tube. And there are this, you know, the mandala patterns basically that are of sacred geometry, but there they are in the light, and people see it in cymatics with the sound, frequency and light and sound vibration. That's us. We're resonating with that. We're awakening to that. So then that comes forth in us, and then we move to the embodiment of beingness of that and what that means. And you go through your electric transformation, you know, through these series of awakenings.
At the very beginning, the voice of God was upon the waters. At the very beginning, what is that? That's cymatics.
Oh,
that's literally cymatics. What's
I mean, it's
the best way that you could describe cymatics is that sentence?
Totally.
The voice of someone on the water, or the voice of God on the water, that's cymatics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that's part of that spiritual journey and awakening. So I think that the sacred geometry is quite important. And I think that also it evolves. And I think a lot of my work that I'm bringing forward, you know, and we'll share some slides here in a moment for the viewers, you know, for both of us. And the way I look at your work, buddy, is being really revolutionary in that sense too, because I haven't seen any designs like that. But when I look at them, I'm like, I could see the connection to things that I'm working on, and how the circles are not locked into one plane, you know, yes. You know, the circles are increasing in size, and then that gets to this phage conjugation, the implosion diagrams. Like, that's my latest thing, is working with Dan Winters. Dan and I have a video together where we're talking about these dynamics of physics and putting them into our sacred geometric designs that are showing the implosion, you know, and taking, you know, essentially like this zone model here that is one part of a larger structure. And this is just fractally embedded. This is the pine cone kissing noses. It's just rigid structure basically, but these are spirals that are continually ever condensing down into compressing infinitely within this. So
I love what you did there, and I also watched the video. And yeah, we've had Tufan on our show before
oh, good.
as well. Yeah. And I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to doing a show with Dan. I've been waiting to the point of where I can properly put together a presentation geared towards Dan.
Mhm.
To do a podcast with him. But yeah, just because he's so prominent in my list of heroes,
Mhm.
like people that I have in my top 10 list of inspirational characters, which I was going to ask that question to you, if you could write down a list of your top 10 favorite contributors to geometry or inspirers,
Mhm.
who would be on it, like your
Uh,
what's that president wall, what would be on your monumental wall?
well, I think when I look back at some of my work, it's the books. I got like 200 books upstairs. Tons and tons of books. I don't really read them all. I wish I could have all the time. I look at the pictures basically and see which ones resonate. But I'd say, like, I've done a few work with Frank Chester. Like, he really inspired me to move from 2D to 3D. I have a few interviews with him. Frank's work, I think, is just phenomenal. Is how he's looking at the geometry of the heart. Just did a podcast with him yesterday in the New Conversations. It's just the creativity of working in that way. And there's other geometers, like, of course, Nassim Harriman's work was early on in my interest, kind of got me into the 64 tetrahedron grid and starting to draw geometry. Jane 108, of course, very well popular. I like to use his pi value for pi in a lot of my calculations, so I'm quite thankful for his work. The other inspiring people are really some of the old time books. Mattila Ghyaka, Ghyka, I believe his last name is, one of these old books based on phi proportion. That book was pivotal because it actually showed me that the things I was coming up with were 100 years old, and of course older.
Indeed. Yeah.
They had that then, and I was like, why didn't this really get transferred of incorporating phi ratio as much into these more new patterns? Like,
I'm gonna write that name down. Can you do that name drop again?
I think it's Ghyka, Mattila Ghyaka. Whole thing. I'll have to put it. I'm totally butchering the name, but he's
Yeah.
I think it's gold. He's
We'll
got
share
a
it in the
lot on
links.
golden ratio. A lot of old time images, that really was like, wow, this is how I'm using the phi proportion in my drawings. And looking at his diagrams were just amazing. I mean, that book really helped me feel confident with what I was working with, because I wasn't seeing it as represented in some of the more modern designs, which, of course, Carvalho Melchizedek was an inspirational person that really introduced a broad scope of people to sacred geometry. And then he was part of it, but now I'm looking at some of the material in the book and working with that, particularly like adding phi ratio to the flower of life and the platonic solids, and correcting the inaccuracies that were in that presented there. But definitely everybody's played a huge part of that. But I keep a touch on everybody, everything that's out there in terms of shows up at the right time, just like your work did for me too. So I find inspiration in a lot of geometers. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, I guess I should introduce some of, or say some of mine too, right?
Oh yeah. No, sorry, I forgot to ask. Please go ahead.
No, it's only right. So I asked you, so I figure I might as well tit for tat here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, there's of course Buckminster Fuller.
Oh yeah, you're going to mention a lot of mine too. So maybe
right. Yeah, I mean, but that was great right off the fly.
Walter Russell.
That was great right off the fly. Wonderful name drops, all inspirations for me as well. Hartmut Mueller. He's global scaling is one of his things. What is his other thing? Interscaler it's at interscaler.com, I think. But it's about interscalar universe, and it goes directly with our geometry. Well, the more we get into what we're doing, and it's all based off Euler or Euler's constant, and how it relates to every other thing, and the scale and the proportion all the way down. Beltrami. Beltrami is Beltrami's vortex. He's the first person that I can find as far back as describing Birkeland currents. So, I mean, these structures were around before Don Scott, who's another one of my inspirations, did the math for it in 2015. And I'm discovering it in all of the geometry, that everything's made up of these Bessel functions, which is the repeating Bessel functions, which is the surface of a drum head. And resounding Bessel functions. So, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Dan Winter. Let's see. Yep, Birkeland, Christian Birkeland, Walter Russell, Hans Alfvén. Yeah, that's a few.
You're lucky you had a list there. I mean, I had to shoot from the fly here.
You did right off that out. You know, I hit you right off of the. I'm looking at pictures. I'm looking at all these pictures because I'm putting together a stained glass design with all their artwork. How do I make this back big?
Oh man, that's amazing. I look forward to seeing that.
There we go.
Well, hey, should we show a little bit of some of our slides? You know, this is a
Heck yeah. Let's hop into this.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could just show the implosion diagram because I think this will probably relate to some of Buddy's, or it looks similar to things that when I was checking it out. So let me just share my screen real quick.
Yes, please.
I don't think I need to do it in order, but we'll just skip through some things to just show you this implosion diagram that from the hexagon perspective, at least, of just this one is, I talk a lot about in the Dan Winter Star Mother kit. He's got a model that's based, that I found was geometrically connected to this. Here's his Star Mother model that, you know, is a dodecahedron with the stellations of it. The great stellated dodecahedron, small stellated, he calls this icosahedron, stellated icosa, stellated dodeca. And then that sequence, you know, nests all the platonic solids, and then infinitely will continue to fractally expand three-dimensionally. And you could take this design here and pretty much overlay it so that the dodecahedron and icosahedron will be within each of these, you know, compressing circles or expanding circles, because it works both ways here. Really pretty much, you know, infinitely, as Dan and I were saying, down to the Planck scale here, you know, because his work relates to the Planck scale. So this diagram is all based on the phi proportion, right? It's all these circles are in phi relationship as we go in toward the center. You know, so if this one here was 1, scale invariant, but if this was 1, this would be 1.618, this one would be 0.618 diameter, and so on and so forth, right? And then the same thing with these circles are all in phi proportion as well, all the way through. So this circle right here is the same size as this circle, and this circle here is the same size as that circle. And of course, it's one static view of this looking, but this really took my geometry to being, you know, from kind of flat plane of all the same size circles working with, to kind of start to get it to display that
projective geometry.
Yeah, this I could lay over top of it, and it, you know, this was all flat, it would just look like a bunch of pentagons and lines. But if I turned it to the side like this, it's this cone shape that's infinitely, you know, compressing down into the center here. and we could build that out. And then of course I use this model, you know, to create so many other Platonic forms and other stellations, for instance.
Can I say something about this slide?
Yeah, let me go back to that first before I jump too far ahead. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
So I just wanted to say that I believe that that's inverse square scaling based off of the square within the square grid, right? That's how you get that Bessel function out of the phi circles.
You know, you could put squares into this. I mean, I might have lost you on the terminology there. You might have to explain some things, but this is from, you know, the seed of life version, but inverse square. Just how are you seeing this?
So I saw a video of yours talking about the crystal spiral, which actually I reached out to you about that on our podcast maybe 8 months ago, when you really got into talking about the crystal spiral, which I have a couple of questions about, more than a couple questions, to hear your perspective on it. But so I saw one about the crystal spiral, and you talking about when you do a square and then you do an inverse square on the inside of it, and then a square within a square, and that's how you get this Bessel function. That's how you get the circle ratio. And I'm recognizing it. Is that it?
No, this is even easier to do than that pattern that I was showing with the crystal spiral. I mean, these, you know, to create this pattern here, like I could call up that slideshow. I think the one you're talking about, where I go through basically going through the square root of phi, showing up repeatedly in it, and I'm showing within that how the crystal spiral goes around and produces the phi ratio as it continually gets larger from that particular, what I call the square view, you know, repeating squares that are counter rotating around each other, because that's what the crystal spiral is based off of. I could do that same thing, but this is just from this hexagon orientation. So I'm not using the square in this one, right? This is, you know, flower of life, seed of life pattern. Like, you know, this is what this pattern emerged from, is basically working with this root pattern that many people are familiar with. You know, it turned into this pattern, which I call the golden circle seed of life, because it's those 6 around 1, just with phi ratio circles. And then I expanded all those circles out into this. And then that took me to, okay, rather than working with the same plane, which this is really, you know, it's not imploding or not. This is what Dan calls kind of like hexagonal structure, is very storage based. It's very steady and stable. That's what this hangs out in order to introduce that implosion.
1 second. Mom, I'm on a podcast. I gotta let you go. I'll call you in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, you gotta go. You can't not take a call from Mom, for sure.
She called me twice, so.
Oh yeah, you got it. Let me just repeat that. Dan was saying that the hexagonal structure, you know, which I started to realize before I heard him talk about it, is about storage, maintaining energy. Like it's not compressing. It's just a stable plane, like a snowflake crystallizes, right? And it's very stable. Well, in order to get it to implode, you had to add the different size circles to it, which this was starting to do that. But once I started to scale them down inwards like this, then all of a sudden I created the implosion within the diagram. But this is just the overview of the history, kind of how that came about through many different variations.
Because it looks really familiar. Like I see it in Aurora's work. I don't know if you're familiar with Aurora.
No.
She's the lasagna, what's it called? Rainbow Lasagna.
I haven't heard of that one.
She does Rainbow Lasagna geometry. But yeah, she's something else. She's amazing. She's definitely a trip. She's great. She talks about just basically already being ascended and all this magical stuff having to do with her geometry. And that's what it is. It's magical. I mean, this is the rainbows and unicorn butter stuff, you know, this is the bread and butter. Yeah. You know, I love getting into this. So it's great to see this picture particularly, well, I've created some things that look like this, and they naturally form crystallize inside of every wave field, inside of the harmonics of the Doherty set. Every wave field, which is only a certain broad, small amount of the Doherty set, has waves moving through it, because they're a compression and a rarefaction of the field, the fractal field around it. The field creates the forms. So the forms actually are these condensed waves, these like down here, yeah, the hexagon. You can see the explosion and the implosion. This one looks specifically implosive, but there is no, you have to have anything that's implosive has to be explosive and implosive. If it's one, it has to be both, because there has to be a way in and a way out, according to synergetics and Bucky and the geometry that I'm familiar with and working on. But please continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you're saying, the field does create the forms. I mean, those interlocking circles, like these look like just I've connected some lines, but this is, the rhombic tricontahedron, which is, a fusion of the dodecahedron, icosahedron. They're just, this hexagon is basically, part of this bigger rhombic triconahedron, but it really is another smaller form inside a smaller form, inside a smaller form, inside a smaller form. So the circle pattern, just by connecting the lines at these various locations, which are all given in the drawing. I mean, you see how the nodes just line up. It's like it wants to happen. It now shows you that the forms are compressing in that way. So the circle pattern in that field, which is like, waves, I kind of look at it as creating these nodal points at the intersections where the formed lines start to show up. So, and that's only one example. Like all these other geometry, all these other forms are now drawn from that circle pattern, right? So these are just some of my, creative, as Frank Chester says, lawful exploration of this, because I really make sure that these lines are true nature to the form. Like this little form right here is what you're looking at in the top left here. This is like a one-for-one representation of what I have in my hand. So this is like a template for creating these 3D structures. And this is, it was only discovered in 1973 by Coxeter, who's another big inspiration of mine. I don't understand nearly 1/5 of what he's talking about, but I see the geometry and the structure in there. And that opened my eyes to figuring out how to draw it, to make it applicable. This is my kind of mission with this, is make it applicable to geometers, to incorporate this into a pattern language that then starts to show up in the culture. And then all of a sudden these forms, which feel so far and buried away in regular polytope book, are actually informing us about our relationship and connection to universal structure. So that's how the art and the science and culture, in my view, are kind of interconnected, and having these upgraded designs that are accurately represented kind of, or in alignment with that. So, I'll just do a little smattering here. Feel free to stop me. But the one last piece is like that led me to the next dimension with my drawings, right? 4D drawings. So these are 4-dimensional drawings or representations, 4D structures. Of course, if you rotate it, they're going to look totally different from different views. And these are just snapshots. But basically what it's saying is that through working with the phi ratio in these patterns started to give me very complex structures that the nodal points in that wave inner field were starting to connect together to create these 120 cell dodecaplex or the 600 cell tetraplex from all these different views, like I said, and I could do it from the square view, twofold symmetry as well. So that's really like, this is what my videos are about for people who are new to me. I just love explaining geometry because I'm a tracker. I teach people tracking. I'm very detailed into expressing it. And because I'm a tracker, I also double test and check out, because when I share that knowledge with people, like if you're sharing a mushroom with someone, you don't want them to eat it and die, right? You want to share as the information as truthful as you can, so that you're like 100% accurate with this, because you want to make sure they feel confident eating that mushroom. So that's how I approach sacred geometry, basically. I want to feed you sacred geometry that's coming from, you know, the most accurate way that I can, because I want to feed you like this type of information that's just clear and truthful.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of what I'm working on. And just, this is one slide just to do this, is because I think this is really big to my work, and it's going to be controversial for so many people that are really getting introduced to sacred geometry or way into it. You know, I discovered that the Metatrons Cube, which is very, you know, significant in the sacred geometry symbology, it wasn't showing us the truth, this accurate dodecahedron that I have here on the left, which has these phi ratio circles, because this pattern didn't have phi ratio in it. So if I take a pentagon here and basically show you what it looks like if I was to take the lid off the top of this dodecahedron, you see that the phi ratio is not maintained between this edge of the pentagon to that edge of the pentagon. See how those slope back and those are straight? Here, everything just goes 1 for 1 to the connection points of the pentagon. Now, I've had a few people say, hey, well, maybe that's because it's a perspective drawing or something like that, you know, you're looking at, and that's okay, I'm good with that, but it's going to lock you in and not allow you to build other forms off it that are based on phi ratio. So basically what I'm saying is you miss out on all this, all these stellations, right? All this, because this all has to be unified through the phi ratio to get any of this stuff. You can have the perspective drawing, and I know I'm going off here a little bit, but you can have the perspective drawing, but once you start to stellate and do all those things, well, then everything after that is thrown off. And for the icosahedron, it's just the kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I showed in my videos, like, that's a flat 2D triangles, 2 triangles, right? I mean, 1 equilateral triangle, 1 equilateral triangle. That's what you're looking at. You know, for this, it has to curve because the icosahedron is, you know, could put a sphere around it. So it's not going to be flat. So that's an easy one to kind of correct. But the thing is, this work really shows that. And it's not just to be perfect, it's that it's opening up other windows of opportunity, which are really highlighted in this slide. Okay. So it's kind of like coming to grips with, like, Metatrons Cube is really about the cube, not about containing all the platonic solids. It's really about the cube, octahedron and tetrahedron, rhombic dodecahedron, cube octahedron. It does all that geometry, 64 tetrahedron grid, all that beautifully. But once you introduce the other platonic solids into it, you need the phi ratio. It's like a matter of fact. You got to put phi in there to get them. And when I did that, then all this other stuff basically imploded in my mind, basically, and just exploded out. And it just was like one thing after another. It all made sense. So that's really, you know, buddy, there's so much I could share on other things, but that's really the main, you know, and this is in a lot of my videos. It's really some of the main things I wanted to kind of describe of just my approach to sacred geometry, and just, you know, and I love your work, because what you're doing with a lot of this material, which I don't understand as well, is infusing it into the electric field model and studying the other researchers of the science, like Dan Winter's work, and why this geometry is, the representation of it is valuable for the evolution of our consciousness, basically, and what it means to us on a biological, spiritual, emotional level, and all those levels. So that's all I got. Is there any slides on here that you wanted me to talk about, or you have any comments, questions, or things that are percolating for you?
I think great presentation. I think it ties directly into some questions and some other things that I have here. So as far as the crystal spiral goes, I was trying to figure out a name for the crystal spiral, because as you were talking about, it's the spiral that goes directly to source. So whereas other spirals are logarithmic spirals and they'll never hit source, from what I was getting the impression on one of your videos. But
okay. Hold on a second, buddy. Let me just clarify some things. Like,
yes, please.
So what I just showed you here isn't really about crystal spiral at all.
No, I want to tie it into the crystal spiral.
Okay.
Yeah.
This, I really just approached this hexagon view. Like the crystal spiral is completely a design that's built off of twofold or fourfold symmetry of squares.
It's in this, and this is exactly what it is. It's there. Well, similar. I mean, you have a lot of other beautiful and elegant designs that I haven't seen before, you know, pop out in and out of this in a new way. And I mean, these discoveries, as you find them and how they interlink with the larger structure as they stellate, is more where I was going to go with the crystal spiral, and how it actually becomes projective geometry, like you were talking about when you got into this. This is how you actually started seeing your geometry with multiple circles, with an expansion and a contraction. Mm-hmm. There's crystalline forms, or these plasma instabilities. Plasma instabilities may very well be some of these crystalline types of geometry that a lot of these, as they can expand and contract in their state, they can become a solid. Mm-hmm. So there's a fluidity with the shapes and the expansion and compression and rarefaction of it. Yeah. But these dial into source too, and each cell becomes the source. Yeah. And can you tell us somewhat about that?
Well, let me just. Are you seeing a different slide show up now? Do you see this one that I just called up?
I see Metatrons Cube.
Okay, I have to share a different screen here, because I'll share a different presentation for you that is on the crystal spiral, because I had a feeling you might ask me a little bit about that. Because what I tried to do with the crystal spiral, do you see this one now? Crystal Prez, this little.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, you see the new one? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, I mean, I haven't done a crystal spiral video. It's really interesting to me that they're really my most popular videos out there. Because
well, I've been trying to find a name for it for a long time, and so have a lot of people, and I don't know if there's necessarily a name for it. Mm-hmm. Like I used to call it the Russell spiral, the inverse square spiral, the square root 2 spiral, but it becomes cube root in 3 dimensions. So yeah, I mean, it's just so.
This is what I was, you know, this crystal spiral, and you know, there's a lot of interest with many different people that have different takes on what this whole crystal spiral is about and how it relates to the phi ratio spiral, golden spiral, and things. And there's a lot of comparison. You know, I was particularly interested in exploring this spiral really from the geometric point of view, and really trying to understand what they call the geometry it's based on, this Cathar grid. This is some of the iconography from the freedom teachings that are popular within the group of people who really gravitate this. But I wanted to build these into 3D structures.
Do you know what the Cathar grid is? Can you explain what Cathar is? I don't know what any of that is.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know a lot too, but this is what a basic Cathar grid unit is. Basically, is what they call this is a Cathar grid unit, and they take these together and put them together in a way. Let me zoom out because I think I'm too close here.
Okay, because I keep seeing guys harp on me constantly about this on a lot of my posts.
Yeah.
And the people that are talking about this is oftentimes related to the swastika symbol and how that is extremely ancient and obviously important symbol throughout history.
Yeah, well, I tried to with my work here show that, because in the Cathar grid movement, they're very anti-flower of life. You might have heard things like daisy of death, or there's fib of no chi, which, saying basically the Fibonacci sequence and nature is a kind of a destructive pattern, and so you have a lot of tension within that group and a lot of name calling of other sacred geometry. So it's, there's a lot of division that's created from this. And I didn't really know much about it. So I wanted to understand it from a three-dimensional perspective. I've had some conversations with people who are into the Cathar grid and these shapes and designs. But I wanted to put some geometry to it and see it as a three-dimensional structure, because I didn't see in their book or their guides that are out there, like, how is this 2D drawing that's done? Does it have 3D structure? Is it imploding? What is it doing, right? I mean, we can just draw maps, of consciousness, and they can be flat, and we can use them to say, well, this is this dimension, this is that dimension. But how does that relate to, implosion, explosion, fractality? Is it actually a model for our universal structure, or is it just a model of like consciousness, just labeling things? So I tried to look at this structure. This is just a 2D drawing. And then I started building Zoom tools out of it and turned it into, it wanted to work with cubic structure. And it turned out just to be a big rhombic dodecahedron that you've taken parts off of to make it look a little more interesting with the connecting lines. That's what I came away with. So I could build superstructures out of this, more rhombic dodecahedrons together. You could put more together. That's my take on it. I don't know how well accepted it is within that group. So here's this big grid. That's the rhombic dodecahedron that I'm describing. That's the geometry I found with it. But what I wanted to show was really, if we take that structure and just rotate it, it will fit over the flower of life. So it's the same thing I'm talking about, is like, are we just now attached to one view and saying this is the leg? This is the elephant, is what it feels like when we're holding the leg. But, if I rotate it over here, well, maybe it has another leg, and that then is what it looks like. And then I put the flower of life over. So is it really the daisy of death, or is it really just one particular perspective of a unified field? I might be wrong with that based on what their teachings are saying, but to me, this is the best way I could attempt, because I'm not a Catharist. I don't know what the name is. I'm just a geometer who explores inquisitively. So this is my exploration, the best I could do to describe it. And looking at the same thing, like this is their Ruche God seed image. And I basically showed, well, this is what the Ruche God seed looks like if you rotated that whole structure to make it look like a flower of life pattern, right? With life. And all
great job.
Just change.
Yeah. Great job. That's a wonderful way of depicting it. We've gone through this on our separate episodes throughout the geometric view, and came to the same conclusion, which is also the same conclusion of it's the IVM, the isotropic vector matrix. Mm-hmm. So it's not the 64 grid lattice. Yeah. And I guess what it's also called is the A3 lattice in mathematics.
Huh, okay.
I believe, if I'm not wrong.
I haven't looked into that.
Yeah.
So just a little more on that one, buddy, though, is like some things I started to do with the spiral is, I started to turn the spiral rather than I wanted to know if this spiral was flat, because if it's flat, but if it now is part of 3D geometry, then I could be able to turn these cubes. So this is a cube rotated to a square version of a cube, rotated to a long. So basically what I'm doing with these cubes are this. Here's the first one, the biggest, then the smaller one like this, then the next one's like this, the next one's like that, the next one's like that.
Counter rotating.
So you have to.
That's what charge does. Typically, that's an indicator, indicative of charge.
Yeah. So what I did was I visualized this all in my mind and tried to depict it. It's like if you're following this connect the dots, this blue line connects over to this. This is an edge of a cube to another edge of a cube that's smaller on the inside. So that goes to this one. And then this line is lined up from here to here. So it's coming towards you here, right? So that's connecting to this other cube. And then that's kind of, so this thing you got to visualize, as you can, looking down the top, it's like this, but from the side, it will just just look like a squiggle, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I always like to do fun stuff and lay it over the human body, put the person in the rhombic dodecahedron, because now we've got some three-dimensionality. We've got the octahedron in here. So the octahedron in this model, the way I viewed it, the octahedron would be your diamond body of light or vertical point rather than the cube, because the octahedron in the cube is on the flat face of the cube rather than the tetrahedron, right? So that really changed some things around there. But, now you could also have the pentagon. So the way I started to relate to these energies moving through the body is they're really like caps or, ways you can orient to the geometry. And that will change the way that energy's, your consciousness is around it. So it may have an effect on how you're relating to the geometry and how it's influencing you, your thought process, of whether you're aligned with that or not. Whether your thought process is aligned with that pattern of creation or whether it's not, that maybe that's a way to look at it.
Well,
so anyway, yeah, go ahead, buddy.
As I'll show here shortly, I love these geometries. If I look back in my geometry, I swear I have this red and blue, very similar, being able to recognize the pattern. I swear I've created something similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, continue. I was going to say, yeah, I'll show that it's not just this geometry. There's a bunch more different types of geometry than what we're looking at from seemingly 2 different or 3 different angles.
Yeah.
There's a cornucopia of new geometries that are going to come out of not only this but other projective geometries, as I'll show through the Theodorian roots, which I'm excited to do. So
yeah,
continue.
We can get into that in a minute. I mean, that's
yeah, please continue.
And of course, this is just one perspective. This is really a lot of my old work. Like I've done the same thing with a person in a rhombic dodecahedron, a rhombic triconahedron, this one with the pentagon oriented at the top, right? Like an apple. And that to me feels different. And I feel like I resonate more with that. And then of course, you've got the tetrahedron and the cube, and that's very popular out there. So, people have to feel into this for themselves to feel how it is part of their awakening, rather than saying there's only one way to go about it. So there's
Indeed.
a lot to choose from,
Yep.
To choose from. And these are just some, you got to really start to understand it. And the geometry will show you what makes most sense for you at that particular time. But it might just be not to get locked into it, might be a passing phase that's only leading you somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And like you're saying, there are so many. The reason I talk about 3 or 4 views usually is because that's how I draw them. I'm kind of, the techniques of sacred geometry work really well to, draw octagons, hexagons, squares, those types of patterns. But so then I draw the rest of the images from those views or a side view. But of course, we've got infinite amount of directionality around this. So, that's when you get into more creative artistic expressions, which I think your work starts to get into. As I look at it, it really breaks out of the box even more, of what I've been working with just the regular techniques of just 3 views, let's say, up top, above, side, left, right, pentagon view, hexagon view, square view, as I call them. So that's really all I wanted to show. I knew you were going to ask a few about that. I don't know if this was the best presentation to put up.
No, this is great. This was ingenious. That's the last thing that I thought you were going to go to. What is it, Cathar grid?
Let me see if I can find one more that I think's useful. Cathar grid, KH.
What is the origin of the name of that?
I don't, buddy, you're asking me a lot of questions because I'm not a person who really was into
that's
it.
Fine. I mean, if you don't have the answer, that's fine. I mean,
well, yeah, okay. The origin is this. From what I understand, there's a woman named Ashiana Dean, Deane. She has a couple videos online that were really very influential with this material and wrote a lot of books. Or 2 books, I think, called Voyagers, maybe, that describe kind of a whole history of, our planet and history of different interstellar beings. And that geometry that we're seeing here is kind of arisen out of that, that she shared. I'm just looking for one other slideshow that I thought was interesting with the Cathar stuff. Don't know if I could find it. No worries. I think we're good with that. I don't really need to revisit. I got 7 or 8 videos. And in fact, they're really my most popular videos on YouTube, almost 3,000 views for one of them. And I didn't think it would take off. But as you can see, it's people, when they get introduced to sacred geometry, I think they're like, oh, flower of life, that's really cool. And you start to hunt around a bit. And all of a sudden you come across these teachings that are like the daisy of death. Right. You know, and it's like, oh, I'm confused. Wait, I thought that was good. I have a lot of people ask me, what do you think about this? So I decided to do those videos to kind of highlight, could it be a different perspective and view way of looking at it, to kind of really open a dialogue rather than kind of be in a divisive place around it. So, hey, it could work out that way, but let's look at it in a different way. And that's what my approach was with that. But it was really, that's over a year old now. And my interest in sacred geometry have expanded beyond that topic.
Okay. Yeah, I soak it all in like a sponge. That was amazing. I love it. And so the reason I'm so poking and prodding with my questions is I've been studying this particular crystal spiral without a name for 18 years this year, or I think 19 years this year. So I was 19 when this vision came, but so 19 years later, I've been working with it, and I couldn't really necessarily find a specific name for it. So the name besides the name, I'm excited to hop into the geometry and how this all relates to the larger global scaling, the larger global interscaling, interlocking perspective. Because we've been talking about a few different grids and how they're actually the same thing from a different perspective. So how many grids are there? How many, is there an infinite amount of grids? And how alive are each one of the circles, and as far as what's their job. Everything has a job as it unfolds and as it enumerates into being. So if I could share my screen.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me share my screen and hop right into probably the best way to describe this.
Yeah, I've got your screen up now and I see all your desktop.
All right.
That is an amazingly organized desktop. I mean, mine is a lot on it, but it looks like it's well constructed.
I got a lot going on all the time. And I'm not even doing a lot right now, as much right now.
Well, it sounds like you're about to start your next wave.
Oh, constantly, always. So I'm hoping that these images come up.
Yes, I see them. They're all, yeah, beautiful.
Clear. Mm-hmm. Okay, so allow me to introduce Theodortian roots. Now, this is what I came up with as far as a really simple way, and I wrote it in because I was so excited to write it in. I don't care if anything's misspelled, whatever, and you get to see my horrible handwriting. But the point is initially I was calling these the Doherty networks. The Doherty set is what I've discovered inside of the geometry and what I've been working with for 18 years. Now, what we've been talking about mostly is the square root, the inverse square law. So, and the inverse cube law, which is actually how all spectra, light, electromagnetism, gravity, sound waves, well, actually sound waves, they change, but they are also embedded inside of this as logarithmic spirals or in Alphean waves. but all of everything moves according to the inverse square law. So it doubles every time, like just like an egg. An egg halves, doubles. So it's the inverse square law. Life is inside of it. It's not a dead spiral. In fact, it's very vivacious. This is how life is created through the crystal spiral. The golden ratio is an excrement of the natural logarithm that comes off of scaling this this geometry. The golden ratio, Bessel function, circles. Each circle is the golden ratio, which you showed so eloquently in one of your videos. This is what I've been studying, just this, for 18 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you take this geometry and you rotate it around itself 12 times, and you get the Doherty set. But it's very simply built. Every one of these is very simply built, and this creates a chain reaction, which sets up structures to be self-assembling, self-descriptive, and emergent. So these emergent properties are natural first principle magnetohydrodynamic geometry. This is how filaments come off of the sun. This is how they spiral off of the sun. This is how they cascade and echo and build the counter rotation within each enveloping layer. This is how I learned about all of this. I went to the Electric Universe Conference in 2017 to go meet Don Scott, because he did the math for the Bessel function for the Birkeland currents, and he saw my geometry and he's like, "When did you make that?" I'm like, 2003. He's like, "You beat me to it." I was like, oh my gosh, the only person I've ever gone to see in person, the only person I've ever paid for, the only time I've ever flown on a plane, I went to go see him for this reason. And he says that about my work. Then he just gave it rave reviews talking about, it was after I gave him my body of work to look at, he said, it was as if you were standing inside of a Birkeland current and you could see all of the intricate details and more than his model predicts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I was like, boom, blown away. That the only person I've ever really needed to find, because when he did a presentation about what a Birkeland current is on the Thunderbolts project on YouTube, I was just like, that's what I'm doing. That's what these are. This is exactly what it is. So I booked a plane immediately to go do this. Now I'm leading the United States Electric Universe Conference, which is one of the great news that I have to share with everybody here in Detroit. I'm throwing it myself, and I'd love to have you as one of the speakers.
Yeah.
I think I shared this to my desktop here. There's a really crappy image of the conference. Really sad to look at, but I could pull it up on Illustrator, but it bogs down my system. So, but here you have the geometry and whatever, you have all the speakers. So I'm planning on that being a big 2-day event. I'm locking down the date right now, most likely in late August or November. I wanted it to be in the fall. We're going to shoot for fall. 2 conferences a year. My boy, Ramon Correga, Shifu, he's throwing one down in Kentucky in the spring, because Kentucky's nice in the spring, and Michigan's great in the fall. So we're going to back to back right there and do 2 conferences a year. So that's really great news for hopefully some of your listeners and definitely my listeners.
Yeah. Once the dates are set, I'll share it on my next one of my upcoming videos.
So let me hop right back into where we were and how simple this is. because this, when I discovered Theodorian roots, I was like, oh my gosh. I was so happy to be able to share this with the world.
Yeah.
Um,
So did you just primarily focus on the square root?
Forever, for 18 years. Now check this out.
What happened?
This is how important it is. This is how crazy this is. This is how many systems there are to start digesting, and how much fun new games and things to build. And it's pretty much endless, the amount of these crystals that you can build in these structures at home with bubble sculpting. Bubble sculpting, I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of that yet.
No, I saw your images of that. Yeah, those are fantastic. Those are so cool.
Yeah, you can construct, they move and they breathe and they expand and contract. This is the dodecahedron set.
Yeah.
The implosive and explosive dodecahedron, it's all hyperbolic. So it's a hyperbolic dodecahedra set. And they allow for charge to come in and go out at the certain nodal points. And look at how similar this particular one looks to COVID.
Oh yeah, right. Look at that. Jeez.
Yeah. So I came up with that right before COVID.
Huh.
I was like, and then I built a red one with red plastic.
Yeah, well, you know, the icosahedral structure is very related to a lot of virus structure, for sure.
So when you were talking about as far as scaling the structure out and stellating the structure, these can all be built into new solids, different types of solids, one-dimensional lattice grids, two-dimensional lattice grids, and three-dimensional lattice grids of each one of these concepts. And there's a million of these to be built. These are all just mostly all built with the inverse square scaling. So let me break this down really quick so I can hop more into what this actually is that's going on here. Okay, this is super simple. You take your base shape, which is your regular polygon.
Yeah.
You inverse it, you or counter rotate it within itself. So that's how you get the inverse of the inversion of it, which builds the Bessel function. When you put circles, you circumscribe this, and then you have the Bessel function.
Okay.
Now, each one of these Bessel functions are the operative generator for the logarithmic scaling units across the grid here, which actually builds up particles, and particles are lenses. It's an optic universe. That's why love is watching. It's an optic universe. We will be able to scale all the way through it, inside and out, optically, and eventually we will be able to sensorily experience ourselves viscerally as any creature. So we'll have the umvelt of the creature, the worldview of the actual squid or a dog. Will have more of a nose brain, but that's dialing into these circuits. And this is an emergent science that I'm developing, and I want to work with other developers on actually how to work more with the Theodorian roots.
Man, that's
so yeah, it's super simple. Look at how simple it is. So this is what builds charge. Charge is built if you have spheres. A sphere inside of a sphere builds charge naturally. And that's what the Earth is made out of. Spheres within spheres within spheres. But spheres within spheres builds life.
Now, so what, you know, on the right there, like when you go all the way to the right, like what are you doing with the image where it kind of expands out like this? What happens with those circles? Like I even see some hexagons in the hexagon one. Like what's going on with those shapes to make them kind of explode or implode? Just describe what's going on the right side.
Okay, so I take the it's 1/r squared, I believe. You take the circle and you repeat it, the same size circle,
I see that.
And then you copy and paste it and iteratively repeat that.
But what's that trying to convey in that motion that's now expanding on a horizontal line?
That's the odd number rule. That's the reason why things fall. Actually, I just watched a Vsauce on it. Great question. This is what builds the outside of the rabbit hole. This is the rabbit hole. You want to know what
this is like
a
vortex tunnel or something.
Yes. What's building this is all vortex technology. So it's implosive and explosive, and it's infinite. Each one of these roots are infinite and they can scale outward. Now to build it, you take this same circle size right here.
Yeah.
Copy, paste it, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Take the same circle here, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Take the same circle here, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. But if you're smart, you can design it in easier ways in Illustrator through iterative copy, paste, rotation processes.
So 1 second, so if we're looking at this just from straight on, then it will just look like circles. You won't see anything other than the diameters of those circles. But now what you're showing is these circles, if we're looking at it from the side, we'll have this kind of look to it that's expanding and radiating out, but from the top view is just a circle pattern.
Yes. And inevitably, once you that's why you have to copy and rotate it. Like I did the pentagonal route and I copied it and rotated it 5 times perfectly around itself. And then I built those hyperbolic geometry crystals out of that Bessel function Theodorian root. Because I can't call them all the Doherty set. This is the original Doherty set. Yeah. But then I created an infinite amount of them, which creates this was already infinite. So, and there's an infinite amount of gates. Each one of these is extremely important once you see how the hyperbolic interactions with, because it's all gold. The entire thing, it's the New Jerusalem, when it's talking about the New Jerusalem, it's talking about what we're doing. The streets are paved in gold. This is where Zitterbewegung happens, where the things pop into existence and go out of existence really fast, according to Schrodinger, and this is where the particle zoo exists. This is why when you go to absolute zero, you're going to more. You get more of the structure versus less, and you get a particle zoo versus you can almost see the waves. See the right there, how it creates these wave fields, these natural waves within it. Yeah. Like your geometries. Now, each one of these then becomes something that we can study. And there's way more work than I can do by myself, which is why I'm introducing, this is only one perspective of the game that I'm introducing. Yeah. Because it's going to take a whole army of people to start disarming this, because I've found so many different plasma equations, and interviewing doctor and plasma physicist after another, and working with electrical engineers. Out of all the people, what I do is I'm an interdisciplinary geometer. So I do geometry for all disciplinaries, all disciplines. So I was wondering who it was that was going to recognize me first, or recognize that this is important, what I've been doing. Leave it up to the electrical engineer and professor, Dr. Donald Scott, who studies electricity and electrical fields and did the geometry and the math for the Bessel function of the Birkeland current. Now, each one of these, the odd number builds the outside of the tunnel. This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm not. No, this is literally what, this is so exciting, because you can only build the outside of the tunnel, the membrane, with odd numbers. all subsequent numbers on the inside nesting are all even, and they're iterative quaternion, Sidonian nested filaments. They number in order, in that order. It's strange, and then you start to understand that, wow, that's actually how our computers work. So our computers are already doing that kind of
I imagine this has got to get into some sort of quantum entanglement or something like that.
Cybernetics.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's interdisciplinary, so it really gets into everything. There's not a field that it doesn't or isn't going to affect. And as we poke and prod more into these, and Elon Musk builds more BMIs, brain to micro interface, or brain to machine interface, we're going to understand these more and understand the internal and external, and actually communicating, and like the Matrix going into the tunnel. But we already have, like you said, we already have the technology. We had the technology. How is the New Jerusalem? When I pull up the Doherty set, you can see there's 3 gates to the north, 3 gates to the east, 3 gates to the south, and 3 gates to the west. You have exactly what they're talking about. But then altogether, you have 12 gates rotating around a center pearl. There's 12 gates at the center of the kingdom. It's all geometry. The entire thing is geometry. That's why this allows for perfect nesting only when you rotate specifically the square root, which is the inverse square law, which is how all light works, and magnetism and everything. This is not the death spiral. This is the life spiral. It's the opposite of it. So,
well,
actually,
that's what the crystal spiral people are saying, though. You know, they are saying what it is you're saying.
That's silly. Yeah. Naysayers. Down with the naysayers.
They're saying that the crystal spiral is probably based on the square root of 2 inverse spiral, because that's what the crystal spiral is based on right here.
Yeah.
What you're describing. So then, you know, then you have to wonder how the golden ratio spiral fits into that, and how that then plays out in our biology and in other fractal patterns in nature, and you know, how is that relating to that? You know, so what's going on with the pentagon version of that? Because I imagine that's going to involve more phi ratio than the inverse square root one, this pentagon root one.
Nope, just as much. Actually, each Bessel function creates only phi. This is why it's so important. When Dan Winter came up with the saying that I heard for the first time ever, phi is the solution to arithmetic and geometric progression, because what we have here is progression. We have growth. We have what is called projective geometry. So this is projective geometry. When you project the geometry, you get all sorts of it actually builds the field of constructive and destructive resonance and waves. So that this cacophony, or this seemingly chaotic field, creates the forms inside of it, and we are a direct construct of that. So these are actually the Birkeland currents that umbilically tie us directly into larger forms. According to this, I'm finding in my research that there's these waves that are outside in these plasma tubes around the Earth, and they're called helicon waves, and they're directly tied to the global electric circuit and the auroras, and you can hear them, and they sound like all the living creatures on the planet, cracking ice, all the geophony, all the theophany, all the biophony, the sound of nature. Everything sounds in these auroras. So these auroras are actually directly tied into the global electric circuit, and they're controlled. Well, anyway, I digress, but there's forms. Our bodies are first built out in the heavens inside of the Van Allen belts before they're formed on Earth, and we directly have a light body while we're alive connected to it. This could be our higher self. This could be, I don't even know. I don't really get into all that woo-woo. I'm not saying the higher self is woo-woo. but I mean, I try to stay as grounded as possible inside of the geometry, and I've seen a lot of people lose their minds getting into going really deep down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
So I try to keep it. I myself don't get into astral projection and a lot of the other stuff cognizantly,
Mhm. Yeah,
because
well,
it's
I mean, I think,
dangerous.
yeah, I think, as Dan likes to use Winter, that is, he wanting to try and apply all the sacred geometry and connect it to the science and physics. And if it, of course, leads to a deeper sense of spirituality and, relates to some of the other experiences people have, whether you have them or not, it's gonna make sense on all those levels. So, what you've been describing might be related to all that anyway. It's just
Yeah.
different language of how you're going about presenting.
Yep. For sure. This is just a random drawing, but this is the third gate. Each one of these gates have a corresponding helical charge and are also have a corresponding note, musical note.
Mm.
So this would be I forget exactly what musical note that corresponds with.
Yeah, these are just fantastic images. I mean, I love the way that this is just a small little piece of it over here in the top left corner, but how you're showing you're pulling out that caduceus braid there, basically, right from the circle pattern, and you just highlighted the lines that you want to kind of highlight that braid. And then I love what you're doing with this circle, the spiral pattern, and then kind of braiding it into the center on those. I mean, that really is just phenomenal looking.
Thank you very much. So what we're looking at here, actually, there's a whole entire field of almost everything that I find that there's an entire field of physics already developed, or mathematics developed towards the category that I'm discovering at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been doing this for so long, finding these circuits. This is the third harmonic. So this is the third gate. So this, I call it the third gate because the center is 0. At the center of the throne, there was nothing, because God and the Lamb are the city. The city is the whole entirety of everything. More Bible scripture from Revelations pertaining to the discoveries and findings of this. Now, I am not by any means only into Christianity and how Christianity deals with this geometries and circuits and binds and silver cords and golden cords connected to God and higher angels and everything else. I am very open to all of the religions, interdisciplinary religious studies. Plasma electromagnetism, PEM, doesn't really leave out any religions because each one of them all have vibrant geometry associated with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what you're doing here with this one at H here. It looks like you have 3 circles that are maybe like a fruit of life type pattern, maybe starting at gate 1, and then you're showing how you're kind of finding those intersections by using the smaller circles. I mean, you're really laying out a nice blueprint for people to see what's going on and making a simplified version of the geometry, of the complexity behind that. And then you're applying all that deep meaning to it on multiple levels, not just the science, but also connecting it to the spirituality connection too, which I think is really important.
Thank you very much. So what got me back into mapping this last round is I was asked to go do a presentation at the University of Science and Philosophy at the grand opening of the Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. And I had already gone out there and met him before that and helped him paint, and brought my daughter to help paint and do some pro bono, and she's never going to paint for the rest of her life ever again. But on her spring break, what a jerk, Dad. So anyway, nonetheless, I get invited to go out there, and he's like, buddy, give me 24 of your best maps, and we'll have you be the first person at the museum show their art and do a presentation. So then I started doing more maps, and like honestly, this business never ends.
Yeah.
It gets better and better and better. There's so many places to go with this. There's if people find stagnation in their geometry, then it's not dynamic. It's a stagnant geometry, which often comes with just looking at forms that are the same size and repetitive forms, tiling, things like that. Yeah. There's dynamic, progressive tiling and projective growth in some of the temples and things like that. But ask yourself, why is it that every one of these beautiful religions on the planet have geometry inside of their temples and as their hierarchy to look at? Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I have speculation on that for sure.
So
but maybe that's for the viewers.
Right. So it might have been a rhetorical question, but hey, I mean, yeah, exactly. Ponder on that for a while. Why is it? So anyway, what this is, I finally found the science, the field associated with this. They're called skyrmions. And ball lightning is actually, they proposed that ball lightning, this is how ball lightning is formed, using these interlocking loops and circuit type geometries that work towards the source, open and go back out. So the hole is open. On the other side, there's another circuit, but then there's another, and then it creates a ball. So this is one of my, I haven't done a presentation on it yet, but this is one of my great new discoveries about what is this that I'm actually studying that the Doherty set is. And it's skyrmions. Skyrmionics is the field.
You know, I just got to interject for 1 sec, because, you know, in my interview with Frank Chester yesterday, he was, you know, he's describing about the heart as a, you know, is it a pump or is it a vortex? And the way, you know, he's looking at the heart as the blood comes in, it vortexes in, and then it comes back up and out, you know, because it has to go in through the microvalve and go out the aorta. So there's this, it's not like a torus, like he was saying in the video, because a torus is a donut that just keeps going around and around like this. Energy comes back into it, but it has to also find its way back out.
Yeah. So any geometry that's not implosive and explosive, I consider dead. There could be a broken chirality about it. But what's funny is that there is a chirality to the crystal spiral, and the square root too. I'm trying to open up a new Facebook to show skyrmionics. It's SKYRMIONS, skyrmions, skyrmionics. Anyway, that's besides the point. I can't open this up because the stupid thing at the top keeps popping down on me. So anyway, yeah, skyrmionics.
Okay. Do you have any slides that you want to show on that, or you think that you have any just, you know, just some your regular drawings that is a nice folder to just, you know, show some of the viewers that aren't familiar on my end with some of the work you've done with your artistic creative imagery? This is a good one, I guess.
Yeah, I can go through this folder. And there was a couple of other things. One of the best ways to go about doing that for me is to just go through one of my pages on the geometric view. Because it has a lot of my geometry, my art, and other things that I do.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I mean, like I said, it's really impactful, and I love, you know, it's more than just art, you know, it's not very just, but you're added all this richness through your research and science to it. and you're hot on the trail and you're making some awesome discoveries and you're connecting with the right people to share it in different areas. And it's becoming really meaningful, it looks like, in all the levels of connection you brought it out to, you know?
Yeah, there's nothing more important than this in the universe. I mean, this is what we're all born and destined to try to understand as philosophers. What is life? What's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Initially, you know, I was trying to create the greatest art piece in my head. I was before all this geometry came to me. I was an artist doing all sorts of art, but I'm like, what's the greatest art piece that you can create? Because I'm like, I can sketch lifelike figures and all this other stuff, you know, similar to Picasso or whatever. Like he did art. He did a bunch of different art. It was great at it. But what is it that's unique? What's I don't think he did what was the greatest thing that you could do, but he did break it down for us, started to break down our understanding of what is art in a different way.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, this you can see the square within the square here.
Yep.
I kept it in for this one to wink for people to be able to find it and understand it. So that's the Doherty set we're looking at right down the hole. The center, which is hollow. The entire universe is hollow. Hollow it is, hollow we are, hallowed be thy name. The entirety of it is hollow. Back to another Bible quote, at the center of the temple and the throne, there was nobody sitting in the center of the throne. It's hollow. It's for us to resonate with, for the columns to fractally form the echoic chambers of eternality. So in my field, which is mostly plasma physics, high energy plasma physics, because that's what this geometry breaks down to. I'm finding after 18 years of research, getting into the primer fields here by David Lapointe. If you go to YouTube, you can see videos about exactly what is happening here and how important this is of a discovery, and how we've seen this in the skies before, in the Squatter Man, and it's all over art, all over the world, this image. But there's a circle here and a circle here, which the circle's already there. So but it's proposed by Dr. Anthony Peratt, a plasma physicist, that because he created this image in the lab and then started getting into archaeology, and I think that's the right term, paleoarchaeology, I forget. But how the cave art and on rocks all around the world had the glyphs that he was creating in the lab. He's like, this is way more than a coincidence that these exact plasma instabilities that he's creating in the lab happen to be on cave art all over and on rocks, and they're all facing south, looking towards the sky, like the southern sky. So it just proves and validates Velikovsky's theory of the planets shifting at different times, and the plasma as they passed each other made it look like the gods were fighting, and it makes perfect sense. That's why in scripture all around the world we see gods and Mercury or Mars fighting Venus, because the gods fought in the skies and it created tumultuity on the ground, and we had to hide under the ground. So you go into all these theories, and a lot of people, a lot of it is in the electric universe and the Thunderbolts project as well. But here is this is CMEs coming off the sun, cosmic microwave, or what are they? CMEs, brain fart for a second, but they create this, these shocks around the earth, and it looks very similar to some of that geometry. These are small pictures. Sorry, but when you draw the cylindrical fields within the cylindrical fields and the collimated cylinders within the bullseye concentric circles, you get charge rotating in one direction and charge rotating in the other direction, then charge rotating in one direction and charge rotating in the other direction. I'm showing that how beamforming you can create and use this as a technology, and dolphins are already doing it. And dolphins 3D imprint the images that they're looking at and scanning. So as we build scanning technologies and other things based off of these geometries, eventually we'll probably be able, like I said, to get into the I3 and become different creatures and experience them, and become the creature non-invasively and just to play and have fun and interact with other humans. And I believe it's time scale independent, so you can go through different times throughout all of history, and you'll be able to watch like a star forming and exploding and reforming and cosmic structures. You'll be able to experientially become the living creature of a galaxy, of a sun, as the sun consciousness. Speaking of sun, you got sundogs here, sundog geometry, perfectly the exact same sundog geometry as the images that we see inside of the sun. So why are these fields reflective, and what do they have to do with? What's the geometry here? How much religions, how much meaning does this have to many religions? You see the crest here. You see a lot of religious symbols here.
Yeah, you definitely are going in the rabbit hole for sure with this, huh?
Speaking of rabbit hole, there's the hole. There's the hole.
Yeah.
There's the hole. There's the hole. So it's all hollow, and it's a repeating Bessel function. So when I get way out here, it's the same. This Bessel function is the same exact Bessel function as this. And see how they kiss noses here?
Yeah.
So what's happening is the sun is repeating itself, which is what the Hindus and Vedics have been saying through cycles and repetitive long yuga cycles and Kali Yuga cycles. And this is the map of Kali Yuga cycles. This is the map of Steve, the really weird aurora that was spotted, the projective aurora, these overlaying helicity. I'm finding everything is helical. Consciousness is helical. Intelligence is helical. Recognition, double helical. Everything is double helical. The way that our bodies are bilateral, bilateral symmetry, and the interpretation of having to have two separate sensory organs to understand what it is that is two of each, mostly, to understand what it is of reality, is an echo of the sensory organ itself being built. So the logarithmic scale invariant reality that we see around us is a consequence of a logarithmic scale invariant construction of geometry that is around us. All of our senses interpret things logarithmically scale invariant. That's the same geometry that we've been talking about. Now, this is another geometry that I found inside the Doherty set with these nested hexagons counter rotating, just like the top of Saturn. And if you know about the Saturn worshiping cult and the black box and black cube and Satan and all that other stuff. It's all fear porn. The entire thing's beautiful. God said it's all perfect and beautiful, and that's what we need to understand it as. It's not bad.
Mhm.
There's bad energies associated with bad solid shapes. Just like the Ouija board has a bad rap or whatever. But yeah, each individual shape, as you construct these shapes, there's energies involved with them. And some of them are destructive. And I believe me, I've had an experience where you don't want to, like, you could actually build a three-dimensional, like, I don't even want to talk about it. These evoke the energy. The shape has power itself. It's called shape power. There's a book about shape power. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I haven't heard that one.
Incredible book. I was gonna talk more about how we are maximum energy, maximum efficient creatures. Anything that is born on Earth is a maximum efficient creature. It's a minimum energy configuration, but a maximum efficient. It's built on maximum, like a perfect design, if you will. The fine structure constant, 1/137.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the fine structure constant, that's what you get inside of these galactic jets, which this energy here that I'm showing is scalable. So like you were talking about, your geometry is scalable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only the way that it is, it's not only this, anything that can be shown on the large stellar formations on a galactic or stellar formation here can be repeated in the lab in plasma physics experiments. Plasma physics experiments, no matter how big they are, if they're small in the lab, they can be scaled up to become a large system like this.
Wow.
So that's one of the greatest things about plasma physics, is that by studying by studying small experiments, we can understand and explore the cosmos. So this is real. This isn't none of that Neil deGrasse Tyson bullshit. As I can't stand none of the scientism crap that's going on. It's all red, dead cult, black magic, dead. It's all death. It's a death cult. There's a death cult, and it's in scientism, and it's in a lot of the arenas that I study. Being interdisciplinary artist and geometer, I have to study all these fields because they all interact in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a cosmic jet, or what is called a Herbig-Haro object, which is hundreds of thousands of light years long, and it's literally composed out of the geometry that we do. This is why I was talking about the crystal spiral so much. This is why probably there's so much interest about the crystal spiral. Partially why there's so much interest. I'm not going to take all the credit. I'll take a tiny little bit of it, but there's so many people. It's evasive. It's infinite. It's binary. It's the code of life. It's also the code of death. It has it's chiral and archiral. So it is the swastika. But you have many different views and many different, when you look at things a different way, perspective of the swastika. This is ancient knowledge. This is how you get antigravitics. This is how you get the key to implosion and fractality, and non-destructive wave compression, like Dan Winter is always droning home about.
Yeah, hold on a sec though. I mean, because Dan's view of implosion is built off of the pentagon face. It's built off of, and that's dealing with this orientation of the pentagon rather than the cube view, which is the square inversion that square root inversion that you're talking about. So I just wondering how those two are relating, because his implosive model is really built on dodecahedron, as the opening to that tunnel that you're talking about. That's a great question, and that's
that's for us to answer somehow. Well, I can answer it, but that's for us to explore more in detail. Now, like I said, I've studied mostly the inverse square law and the square root and cube roots, which is how you get life through Euler transfigurations and how you can actually describe it anyway. But the answer is through the inverse pentagonal law, the inverse pentagonal root. You get this Bessel function, and that is associated directly with the dodecahedral dodecaicosa phase collapse in integration.
So now, how does that play out in the creation story? Because you know you're talking that this.
I just found it. I don't know yet.
Oh, you just found it. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, Dan's work has got to point in the direction of that. So, I mean, I'm sure you're well familiar with it, but I mean, that's exactly what he's been talking about for years. But all our physics experiment, I mean, everything that you're describing in physics and how light works and everything is all based on square root. And that is all based on, you know, Dan's talking about the Grail cup, which is based on the golden spiral with the Grail cup of his implosion model. And it's not mentioning this crystal spiral of the square root of 2 spiral that we've described.
I'd say we're both right. I'd say 100%. There's a key that I found inside of the repetition that happens. And if you look in my other videos, you'll find that I've actually already introduced Theodorian roots a couple times. And as I've introduced these, I go into the actual number grid system, and it gets to the billions and trillions fast. And so fast that it's not worth categorizing or numbering it anymore. And each creature is one of these toroids. It's actually, these are toruses because there's tube within a tube, within a tube, within a tube. So they're all Feigenbaum, like bifurcations of toruses that are nested, more like a vortex. So there's vortexes in, vortexes out on the constant, on the regular, on all scales. Now, Dan went, oh yeah, that's the thing I was gonna say. There's a key secret, and I'm not gonna divulge it here, but if other people go in the other videos on the geometric view, particularly probably the Theodorian roots one, you can see that there's a pentagonal pattern that's happening inside of it. And I don't know what that pentagonal pattern is, but it's also helical. So the whole entire thing is based off of this rotating pentagonal inside of the number system in the number grid. So some sort of, it's not quaternion, it's not 4, it's not octonian, it's not 8, but it is, there's something about it that is in a repetition, dialing back into the 0 every 5 repetitions, or every 5th iteration.
Now, hold on a sec. I mean, because you know what I'm thinking of is like, remember I said that, you know, this is Dan's kind of implosion model from the pentagon structure. So that would be the pentagon root that you're describing, the way I see it, you know. And then of course, this is part of this little rhombic tricontahedron. This is part of this form. Now, you know, if you're looking at the form with the pentagon facing you, well, then that's the implosion point because the dodecahedron is in here. But you see, if you turn it to the square face, it's the rhombic diamond like this. That also implodes. That has implosion too, and it looks like this. It's of the same model. And here you're just looking at the rhombic face, which is the red struts, these big red ones, at a smaller rhombic face to a smaller rhombic face to a smaller rhombic face, infinitely too. These two models that I'm showing you here, the two of these, they just fit together essentially like this. I mean, it's part of the same structure. We're either looking at it this way, or I turn it to the square face and you're looking at it that way. So, you know, is it another example that I've described of like maybe each of these views we look at, is particularly from one angle of, one angle, but essentially it's one implosion that's happening from all these different angles, and it's going to particularly look different, either like this, or you're going to look at it like an imploding thing like this, but essentially it just still comes back to something that looks like this, depending on how we're depicting it.
Okay. Yes. Actually, there's one thing that I put in your folder, and that's this. Exactly what you asked. And it's not even, it's actually Dan Winter.
I've seen this image before. What is this?
Yeah. Now let me get
put a little bigger though.
Let me get a piece here that that correlates perfectly with this, that I have very rarely and seldom shown off, because the rarity of it is so enigmatic to me that I don't understand it. So just because I don't understand it, okay, it makes me want to learn more before I present it. But
yeah, maybe we need to go to full screen at some point. But yeah, I can. Okay, so there's the pentagon structure with the little kind of tunnel going in, and is it met on the other side the same way?
And there's a ring current, like I was showing before. The importance of a ring current and a flip current in magnetism is it allows charge to move through it. But this, see how flat this is?
Yeah.
Wait, hang on.
Yeah, I see it.
That's flat. That was actually hyperbolic before I made this structure. The whole entire thing is negative Gaussian curvature. So it's similar to a pseudosphere, and that it's all negative curvature.
Hey, I think that might relate to this little model I have. You see this, I mean, this is just straight edges here, but each of these is a pentagon face. It's essentially these little, these shapes on this. If I turn those around, because it's the same thing, either going out or in. So this is the implosion in or out. This goes right in there like that. See?
Yep. Like a glove.
Yeah, exactly. This is some geometric copulation happening here.
So I'm looking for my dodecahedron. Here we go. Oh yeah, we're getting sexy. We're involving putting the positive and the negative. Okay, so you have this. Now
we got to go to big screen here a sec. Do you want to show me anything on the slides? Because this is like people aren't going to be able to see these little things.
Yeah.
So did you want to show me Dan's picture here, or?
Well, I was going to show you how this relates to it. Hang on.
Let's do that, and then we could show off some models, and then I think that's probably going to be, maybe we'll keep going, but probably got to culminate at some point.
Right. I don't know how to make my screen bigger.
I don't know. I mean, you're already full screen. You just click on his image and it will get bigger. Is that what you want to show me, his picture? Or?
Oh no, I'm done doing that. I was gonna make it bigger screen so I could show you what I'm doing.
Okay. At the top of your screen, maybe, or at the bottom, it will say stop sharing or view options, maybe. No, that's my options. Yeah, if you bring your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, a little thing will flash up to say stop share. It should.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere.
Stop share.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Wow, we flipped. Now I'm on the other side. All right. Now I got to use my other hand. Okay, so this is a hyperbolic shape that comes directly out of the Doherty set. I've actually taken this really important shape and because certain things become more important than others inside the shape. But so you drop the dodecahedron in it and it nests perfectly.
Yeah.
Perfectly. Whoop. There's other ones. Yeah, perfectly. There we go.
Yeah, look at that. That's perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's following the pentagonal symmetry as you go in there.
And you can make it explosive and implosive. So this is, I can break down the parts. I haven't really studied the dodecahedral geometry as much. I've been studying that one, and the other one's been so fruitful. The inverse square has been so fruitful. I figure, why stop? Because it just keeps popping out discovery after discovery.
Well, I think, if you're going to be setting up and preparing for a Dan Winter talk, that's probably your, just speculation here. This is your next.
Yeah, you're right. I know, that's why I've waited.
Because this big thing I got here is just one of these little points, right? That's just one of these.
Yeah.
And then that is the inside. It's just, this thing's flipped around now and it's going to the inside. And this little structure, this is the stellation of the small stellated tricontahedron. These two just fit together.
Yeah.
Like that, so it's implosion, explosion happening. But this is really just part of this internal hull of, this tricontahedron shape. It's part of this whole process that I described in the geometry. So it's one particular view, but the pentagon shape really has become the main vortex. When I turn that to the shape like I was showing before, from this point to the flat face of the cube, well, then you're looking at that. But you see, that's also got a caduceus type of zigzag pattern going on here from the square orientation view rather than pentagon face, yet it's still the same geometry is what I'm saying. It's just now presenting a different version of this, coming from the different angle to meet essentially back in the center.
So either way, it can be broken down into helices. It's all helical.
Exactly.
Double helical every time.
Yes. Yeah.
But the double helices can each actually also be broken down. There's pentahelical and other trihelical, trihelical.
Well, hey, I think that's probably a full amount. I mean, I think, wrapping up with the few models at the end, do you have anything else you want to try and add in, buddy? I know you had some other shares. Did you want to conclude with anything more on our conversation? And, I feel down the line, we'll probably reconverge at some point, maybe do a follow-up as we both explore our journeys and see what more comes, because there's always more coming down the pike for me as it is for you. And, checking in every so often will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Your geometry is inspiring me, and I do you mind if I on my shows highlight your geometry and reference it and share your content? No, I'd love to, like, when I'm on my shows, just be like, look at this guy, and this relates to this because of this, and that's
connections that I don't. You tell me about them first of all. But
right.
I don't. No, if I don't see the connection, you might, because you're really deep in understanding the science. I just intuitively go about this. I don't even know what I create a lot of the times, and then discover what it is afterwards. So you're helping me grow and understand more about it. But if you see that it relates to something, just share it, and then just of course, let people know new geometries out there, because there's other avenues that I'm exploring that people might find interest in as well. And I'll do the same with my material with you.
Okay, perfect. So wrapping up, let me double look my list here. While I double look at my list here, give us a shout out where we can find you, where your content is, for my listeners.
Yeah. That's right. New Geometry, KNEW. I imagine this will all be some of it will be in the description. So that's my YouTube channel. newgeometry.space is my website. I also have a Patreon, New Geometry at Patreon. That is specifically, I'm teaching people how to draw, how to work with this, how to learn the artistic talent behind it, or the creative talent of working with compass and straight edge if you haven't done it before. I'm a really good teacher in regards to all the tracking. Like, I've mentored and apprenticed people for years. So I've applied that skill to teaching people some of the basic techniques with the basic drawing, so you could start to do this. So I have an apprenticeship. It's like an 8-week apprenticeship that I have running right now, but I'll continue to do that. And the Patreon, as video lessons and written material that I do monthly, and that builds successively as I'm working on my own book to sacred geometry, and primarily focused on drawing and exploring it, so you can enter into this contemplation like Buddy has and like I have, start to just get familiarized with the tools, so you open that doorway for yourself, so you discover what, you know, your seed, you know, sprouts from that exploration. So those are some ways to connect with me: New Geometry, Patreon, website, YouTube, Facebook, New Geometers group as well. So that's a little group I've got. People share slides, share images, drawings they're doing, general conversations, other people post their interest. It's a pretty loose group. And I post my videos and other drawings and things that I'm doing on there as well. So that's kind of the overview, Buddy. And same for you, Buddy. You got announcements as well. Please share more for my viewers.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great hearing that you're going in so many different directions, and blossoming genius is what I like to call that. As we all are, for sure, blossoming geniuses. Well, not all of us. I'd like to say the ones that are actually inspired, and you are definitely inspired. And it takes first being inspirational to inspire other people. So, well, let's see, a couple things that I got coming up, some upcoming events. Like I said, I got that. You can dial into my content mostly on Facebook. I've started a new endeavor. I am a confectioner. I'm an ice cream man. So I actually I do freeze-dried ice cream. You can find us on Grandma's Space Kitchen Creamery on Facebook. You can follow me, Buddy James, on Facebook. That's I mostly am cognizant and talking more often there. That's where you'll find me than most of my other places. Or let's see, I got a toy show coming up. I didn't even talk about my toy, which is fun. Check that out. It's actually mini. Oh, it's right here. Finger disc. So finger disc. It's miniature disc golf. Professional Finger Disc Golf Association. So I have these tubes filled with discs, and I'm looking to work with people to 3D print more and more different types of discs for aerodynamics. I mean, this is very professional. I'm trying to get a left and a right and a straight, you know, and a putter and everything else. These are the prototypes. And I have baskets. It's not a game until you have a basket or a net. So I have baskets. You can do a 9-hole course. But yeah, I'll be introducing the grand opening at Grand Rapids Toy Show. So check that out. We'll also be doing the space ice cream. As far as geometry, yeah, the Electric Universe Conference, you can find me on Electric Universe Geometry. We have over 34,000 people on our Facebook. Yep, YouTube. I have my own YouTube, Buddy Doherty, and then I have the Geometric View and the Electric View podcasts. So yeah, it's been a great talk, and I'm looking forward to more conversations with you, and I can't wait to check out your Frank Chester talk. I'm a little bit jealous. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait. I haven't got a connection to Frank Chester yet. So maybe we could do a 3-way or something with Frank Chester, and I still have to do one with Dan Winter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see a lot of collaboration in our work in the future, and the more that I see our work converge on different levels, I'll continue to hit you up.
Yeah, it sounds great. You know, as I saw a lot of your sculptural work there, it's like, oh, Frank would really love the bubble sculptures, you know, and, you know, maybe I'll share some of the images with them, because, you know, he'd love seeing people be creative with the geometry. So when I started seeing your stuff earlier today before this, I was like, wow, you know, you're really following the footsteps of a sculptor, geometer like Frank was. You know, I'm more of a 2D drawer kind of teacher in the way that I go about it, but you're really creative with it. So I'm just really thankful we got to connect this way as well, and looking forward to future collaborations for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, there's an infinite amount of those forms, and I keep coming up with new solids. I can't name everything. I mean, I can. I'm a neologist, and the nature of our task as geometers is to name things if there's not names for it already.
Mhm.
So initially, I was going to name the Doherty set transparent golden scaling because it's all transparent and it's all golden scaling.
Mhm.
And then Dan Winter really drove home the idea of phase conjugation is multiples of the golden mean. And that's exactly what it all is. So it's all golden. The brick is, the golden brick road is real, and it's a narrow gate. It's very narrow, as we can see from all the geometry we're looking at. So to get into source, you know, it takes a lot of determination and willpower and love, really, ultimately just love.
Yeah, that's
It all breaks
just
down to
watching.
love.
Love is watching, like you have, like you said,
Yeah.
love is watching. I mean, it's the best way to kind of close things up, because we'll just get in a roll again. But bringing it back
Yep.
to the essential ingredient, for me and for you, as I could tell, it's like the love and the heart and that comes forth from that exploration is coming from that good place. So hopefully our viewers, really felt that in all the different routes we explored, just how much we love and appreciate and explore this sacred world and sacred geometry together. So once again, buddy, I mean, it was fantastic to connect. And I
Thank
think
you,
we're
George.
going to wrap it up at some point. All right,
Yep.
everybody. Peace and much love, everybody. We'll
Thank
see
you.
ya.
Can't wait for the
Bye.
next time. God
All right.
bless.
Bye-bye.